Hillary Clinton has some election non-advice for Democrats going into 2024. She feels like the MAGA cult needs to be deprogrammed. So this is going to really come to be known as Deplorables 2.0 from Hillary Clinton. Here she is on CNN. We're going to play two parts of this interview, actually.
She is just the gift that keeps on giving to her political faction, because she just keeps reminding people why they fucking hate her and everything she stands for every time she sits down to an interview. Whether it's the people who voted for me lived in the counties with the highest GDP, or the deplorables, which, you know, was just a variation on the same theme.
Right.
I mean,
is too.
You know, it's like, you know, she's as out of touch as Barbara Bush was, and she has less excuse because she's not from the aristocracy. She's not to the manor born. But you remember Barbara Bush talking about how great it was for all the people who suffered from Hurricane Katrina because now they got to live better places.
Right.
Better states, you know?
Right. When they got to Houston, she's like, well, Houston's better than New Orleans.
Right. Yeah. Oh, it's better for them. Oh,
yeah.
This is a step up. And it was just such an incredibly out of touch comment. And you could see that she was so out of touch. She had no concept of what was wrong with what she had said. That's Hillary, man. Like, because she keeps saying these things and doesn't course correct. She just keeps doubling, tripling, quadrupling down. It's just amazing.
Yeah, indeed. Well, here she is talking about the deprogramming that's necessary of the MAGA cult.
Sadly, so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump, who has no credibility left by any measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions. And when do they break with him? You know, because at some point, you know, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen.
And how do you do that? Because you said you have to defeat them by defeating their leader. Their leader is Donald Trump. Even you have said that you expect him to be the Republican nominee. How does this change at all?
At this point, I think, sadly, he will still likely be the nominee, and we have to defeat him.
We have to defeat him. All right. So we have to deprogram the cult members, and then Amanpour says, well, this is like, you know, whatever. You have to defeat the leader in order to defeat the It's like the sci-fi movie where it's like, okay, if we can knock out the mothership, all the aliens
take out the queen.
Right, exactly. We take out the queen. That's what it sounded like.
It's very funny that you say that, because on the plane back from Greece, this movie didn't do well, but I actually liked the adaptation of Ender's Game. So I watched it for a second, or maybe third time. I think it was the third time I saw it.
Yeah, I never saw that one. Never saw that one. But actually, this line of hers about deprogramming the cult, obviously, especially given who it's coming from, just a highly unfortunate choice of words. It's actually one of the least offensive things that she said in that entire interview, because really,
that's
whole
what got
thing
all the
as
attention.
a piece, well, that got all the attention. I mean, that's clearly the money quote, right? But the other thing is sort of more macro, which is that watching this interview, you would not know that anyone in the country has any real problems at all. Her only explanation for Trump's popularity is that too many people in the country are extremist bigots who need to be deprogrammed. And she goes on to sort of explain more of what she means, which is actually worse than the quote that everybody has latched onto. So here she is. This goes on for about another minute. We might stop and start, or we might let it play. Let's hear her continue and elaborate on this point.
The base of the Republican Party, for whatever combination of reasons, and it is emotional and psychological, sees in him someone who speaks for them. And they are determined that they will continue to vote for him, attend his rallies, wear his merchandise, because for whatever reason, he and his very negative, nasty form of politics resonates with them.
Okay, so she says, for whatever reason, twice she says that. For a number of reasons, emotional and psychological, not economic, not political. right?
this
emotional and psychological for whatever reasons. They have a lot of things wrong with them. We can try and analyze them, but this is why she goes to the deprogramming line, because she sees this as entirely a problem of ordinary people perpetrating wrongthink, as we mentioned a while back in a different context.
Well, and this is really a distillation of the whole worldview of liberals, because the liberal class are a comfy bunch that don't really have problems like most of the people in the country have at this point. At this point, it's most. That's why the country's coming apart at the seams, because the enticements of a middle-class life are no longer there. Those things are not attainable in the way that they once were for most people. The carrot is not there to keep people inside the pen anymore.
Right.
So they're kicking it out. This is very much like the Vox article that we broke down I think about a week ago.
Yeah.
Where these Harvard analysts examining what we could do to save democracy, exactly the same analysis. The only problem in the country, this is their myth, like they have to explain this kind of political discontent somehow. And they must explain it in a way that does not indict their class, their economic policies, their political philosophy, that doesn't threaten their power, that doesn't threaten the status quo. So they have to come up with something. There has to be some kind of an explanation, right? You need the devil to explain evil, because if God is benevolent, why would you have it? So you got to invent the devil. So if you have this country that's just coming apart, and your policies are really dominant and represent the status quo, well, how do you explain it? Well, you need a devil, and the devil are white men. That's it. It's white men. Literally. White people generally, but white men specifically, who feel insecure because the country has a rising class of people of color and gay people, and that's making them so angry that they're voting for Donald Trump.
Her narrative here is literally that things in America are getting too good for too many people, and that there's a backlash to that that's based entirely in some sort of racial or gender-based resentment. That is what she's saying. Now, that flies in the face of everything we know about what's actually going on in America. That is not to say that racial and gender-based resentment are not real. It is to say that there are clearly other factors driving this that are much more responsible for the fact that people like her are the subject of almost unanimous ridicule unless they are speaking to CNN and MSNBC in front of CNN and MSNBC audiences. Everybody else sees this and either laughs or rolls their eyes or vomits, right?
Right.
But watching this, you wouldn't know.
And while, yes, of course, racism and sexism and homophobia, those things exist, but the argument that a lot of us made when they blamed that, along with Russia, for Trump's election, is that those things have always been with us, and they never led to the election of a game show host.
Right.
Those things by themselves did not have enough force to elect Donald Trump. Without extreme economic deprivation, you don't get there. Especially when you consider without millions of two-time Obama voters, you don't get there.
Right. And oddly enough, I mean, the ultimate irony is some of those very forces did have enough momentum to reelect George W. Bush. For those who don't know, who are too young to know, George W. Bush ran on homophobia in 2004. He did not run on his record of the Iraq War, keeping us safe, or anything like that. He ran very specifically targeted campaigns in very specifically targeted swing states in the middle of the country against gay marriage. And that is how he won.
Yep.
They put gay marriage up on the ballot in Ohio, and they brought out the evangelical vote to vote against gay marriage. And then while all those evangelicals were there voting against gay marriage, they happened to vote for George W. Bush. That's how George W. Bush, who's now welcome in their circles, actually won. So that's the other piece of this. But she goes on, and this is the real coup de grace, in my opinion.
Maybe they don't like migrants. Maybe they don't like gay people
what
or
an
black
original
people
opinion.
or the woman who got the promotion at work they didn't get. Whatever the reason, make America great.
Pick from those reasons. Choose from those options. Those are the reasons.
They don't like their once prosperous small town having turned into a meth-addicted hellhole of crumbling factories and abandoned houses. Pick your reason. It doesn't really matter.
Exactly. But here we go.
Again, was a bid for nostalgia, to return to a place where, people could be in charge of their lives, feel empowered, say what they want, insult whoever came in their way. And that was really attractive to a significant portion of the Republican base. So it is like a cult.
So it is like a cult.
Sure,
it's like
sure.
a cult. It
was all about people wanting to be able to say the N-word openly at the bowling alley.
Right, exactly.
That was it.
Yeah,
that was
just incredible.
That was all that was behind it.
Yep.
She is just amazing, because you want to talk about somebody, and this is not in any way a critique of women or gender, as the Hillbots will accuse you of with any criticism of Queen Hillary. It's not that she's a dumb person, obviously, highly intelligent. She has no political skills. She is purely where she is because of who her husband was. There is no way that Hillary Rodham Clinton decides to get into politics on her own and winds up running for president. She'd be lucky to win a congressional seat. She has no political instinct, skills, insight. She is incredibly loathsome in her persona, in her pronouncements, and she seems to be just such a foul person that no matter how many times she says these things that are in this deplorables direction, and no matter how many times it engenders a backlash, she just keeps going. I mean, it's almost like she's trolling by continuing with that. And I guess she has a certain incentive, because the liberal class that she really cares about applauds her for these kinds of statements. So why not keep making them?
Yeah, and, look, we could have played that whole interview if we wanted, because the hits just kept on coming. I mean, it's 8 minutes, so we weren't going to sit here all night doing it. But, she gave an answer to a question about, the future of the Republican Party, and she said something to the effect of, well, we have to beat Trump with Biden. I think Biden can beat Trump because Trump's negatives are high enough. And then hopefully the fever will break on the Republican side. And how many times have we heard that phrase, not just from her, but from all kinds of liberals? I think Obama has talked about this. Well, that fever's going to break. The fever's going to break. What's so interesting about that attitude is, well, when we defeat Trump, the Republicans will reset, they'll come back to normal, is the Democrats and the liberal the liberal sect at large admitting they have no answer for this. Like, they have no plan to actually combat this, which, when you think about it, just makes no sense. If these people, these deplorables, these cultists in need of deprogramming, if they're so awful and we're so great, then why can't we beat them in an argument, right? Why can't we defeat them with what we do, right? How come our virtue is no match for their vileness? Why not? Like, if you're so great, don't you think you could win the argument, win the debate? Instead, no, we can't. We just have to wait for the fever to break, as if it's totally out of our hands, because it is out of their hands. It's out of their hands because they are not willing to make the kind of adjustments that they would need to actually break the fever of Trumpism, because the answer to Trumpism is more or less the democratic socialist program that Bernie put on offer. That's more or less it. We could argue whether that goes far enough, or we can argue whether or not Bernie was for real about it. That's a different conversation. But there's a reason why both Bernie and Trump surged in 2016. It's because the antidote to right-wing populism is left-wing populism. But they're not willing to go to left-wing populism, so all they can do is wait for the quote-unquote fever to break. And it never will, because they'll never do what is necessary to actually treat the patient, right?
Right. Well, and that's where this mythology serves a purpose for their, brain dead MSNBC base, right? Because they need, it's religion, right? I mean, they need answers, they need explanations. Why are things like this? Why are these people so angry? And when you look at these, there's an endless slew of these condescending articles about how these people need to be educated. If they were better educated, they wouldn't vote this way. They'd be like us,
right?
Exactly. It's the Bill Maher monologue, or that horrific monologue he did about how the coast, the people in the inland and the South want to be like the people from the coasts.
Right.
We have Chef Wolfgang Puck. They have Chef Boyardee. Right? I mean, that's how they think.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
So hey, if we educate these people, then they'll have, what David Brooks calls the Bobo tastes, right? They'll have the elevated taste of our class, and we'll just all be in neoliberal paradise together, and they'll not mind so much that they can't afford a house, or that their formerly prosperous town has, is full of houses with, with trees growing in the former living room. That's not going to bother them anymore.
Please clap.